This might be the fanciest looking bottle of 2025, and some people are already calling it the bourbon of the year. However, it does carry a hefty price tag that'll probably make your wallet sweat. This is Calumet Farms' 18-year-old Trophy Decanter Bourbon, and in this video, we're going to break down whether or not it is worth its hefty price tag. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Brandon Spinner, the Whiskey Weatherman, and you have stormed yourself into the one YouTube channel where it is always whiskey weather. Now, if you're a fan of honest and unbiased bourbon and whiskey reviews, I urge you to hit that subscribe button below so you don't miss out on my next video. We are getting closer and closer to my goal of 15,000 subscribers, and I need your help if we're going to get there before the first week of September, which was my goal as we head towards the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And speaking of Kentucky Bourbon, we've got ourselves an 18-year-old Kentucky Bourbon, a gift from the folks over at Calumet Farms, part of their Centennial Collection. It is a 100-year celebration of racing and heritage, as well as Kentucky whiskey craftsmanship for the folks over at Calumet Farms. They've got a couple other releases as part of this collection. There's 17-year-old bourbon, which they released, as well as a ceramic farm decanter, a bottle and bond, a 91.9 rye, and an origin release. Now, if it was up to presentation, it would probably finish as one of the best bourbons and whiskeys of the year, but we know that's not the case. However, this is still one of the prettiest and most elegant bottles that I have ever reviewed. So much so that I felt like I had to dress up to drink it. Now, this thing's not just a pretty face, it has taken home a bunch of awards so far this year, including 4 separate Best in Show awards at this year's WSWA tasting competition, and it just walked away from the Ascot Awards with a platinum, which is very high praise. So let's break down the technical details on this. This has got to be the highest proof 18-year-old bourbon out there on the market, or at least the highest one that I have seen so far. Checks in at 118 proof, 4% perspective. Knob Creek 18, bottled at 100 proof, and Elijah Craig 18 year checks in at 90 proof, so this is much higher than the two of them. It is distilled in Bardstown, Kentucky, and it has a mash bill right there on the neck. 74% corn, 18% rye, and 8% malted barley, which likely points to the fact that they're likely sourcing from Barton 1792. Now, here's where we're going to lose some people on this. It's got a very pricey MSRP of $500, which is probably why I've been seeing a lot of these around me just sitting on the shelf. I'm gonna guess that's because of the price point. Now, if you're new here, let's talk about how I'm going to rate and review this bottle. I use my custom 10-point system that I call the lightning counter. It is a rating scale which judges each pour on 5 equal categories: the nose, the flavor, the mouthfeel, the finish, and ultimately the value, all worth 2 points each. At the end of the day, we total it up to see where it stacks up against everything else that I've reviewed so far this year. So let's see if it can overtake that Jack Daniel's 14 year as my top spot so far here in 2025, which I believe had a score of 9.1. Let's see if this one can beat it. Oh, that nose is beautiful. This nose really reminds me a lot of Russell's 15 from last year. A lot of dark oak, some vanillas, some cherries coming through. Classic bourbon. Honestly, that's something I can sniff all day. Now, if that was that's candle worthy right there. That gets a 2.0. Like, that is high praise. There's a whole lot of oaks. There's some sweet oaks. There's some dark oak. Vanilla's come through. That's what you want your classic bourbon to just smell like. And like, look at the color on that thing. Of course, 18 years old, but you're not really proofing it down a whole lot at 118. There's a little bit of like a rye spice on the nose, but not much. And that's beautiful. Yeah, 2.0 on a nose. If it tastes as good as it smells, we're in for a treat. Cheers. The oak comes through. That is for sure. Woo. And it does sip hotter than it smells. I'll tell you that. So you get a whole lot more of that proof. There's a lot of the vanillas. I do think you get a little bit more of the heat. And I'm hoping the more and more that this sits, the more it'll open up. But at first, there's definitely a lot of those oak tannins coming through. Wouldn't say that it is totally off-putting, but certainly it lights you up. As for that second sip, Oh, that's good. If you're a fan of oak, you're gonna like this one. There's a whole lot of it there. There's some of that sweet oak, some bitter oak mixed in there as well. Vanillas, caramels, classic bourbon notes. This is definitely to me a Barton whiskey or a Barton bourbon. It's got all of those classic notes with a little hint of that cherry, but not as sweet on the palate as I would have anticipated coming from the nose. The vanillas are a little more muted. Still not bad. I'd probably go down to a 1.7 on the flavor on this thing. I do think that there could be a little bit more sweetness. Obviously, it's 18 years old, so you're gonna have a lot more of that wood tannin coming through. So if that's your thing, this is kind of what I would expect, or at least hope, that Knob Creek 18 to taste like. It's just a little bit more muted to me because it is proofed down a bit. Boy, this is good. Yeah, 1.7. A little more of that cherry. I don't think it's as sweet or as widespread of like a palate as I got from the Russell's 15 or even the Jack 14 personally. So that's why it gets that 1.7 on the flavor. The mouthfeel itself is going to get a 1.7 as well because that's a little bit dry and a little bit hot. It's not quite as buttery or as creamy as I would hope for, but it is still very good. It's got a whole lot of oiliness to it, and I think it coats the mouth pretty well. It does have a little bit of a heat to it or some sharpness, so that's what's going to knock it down slightly for me, but still a 1.7, not too shabby. So far we're sitting at a 5.4 out of 6. And now as we move towards the finish, as I'm talking, you still get a pretty decent amount on the back end. The finish would probably be not my favorite part of this pour, but it is still pretty good. Let's see what it's like. Yeah, that has tamed down a little bit more now that I've sipped it a couple of times. Still really good. The back end, a lot more of those baking spices. I've got some cloves trying to sneak through, even maybe some cardamom, something along those lines like you would be going through your grandmother's baking spice cabinet. That's what I'm definitely getting. A hint of nutmeg, more of that cinnamon and leather towards the back end as well. It's got a lot more of those earthy tones on the finish. We're gonna give that a 1.6 as well. So overall, very good score on this Calumet 18. I mentioned 118 proof, just popped into my head. The Heaven Hill 18 year last year was 120 proof, I believe, so this is just a few proof points below that. I do think that the nose on this is slightly better, and I think they drink very similarly in my estimation and my thoughts. So that would be a really good blind side to side to see which one of those would be the best. Price-wise though, the value, this is where you're gonna lose me on this bottle. I enjoy this whiskey. I think it is very good. And if the price point was a lot closer to the Russell's 15 or that Heaven Hill 18 year, which I thought was quite extreme, especially at $300, but still, you're looking at $10 a year, should be right around 180. I get that this is in a fancy bottle, in a box, but still, when it comes to the fact that this is a $500 bourbon, that's kind of where you lose me here. Is it a $500 bourbon? I don't think there's anything out there that is a $500 bourbon, personally. I think the most I would ever spend is probably close to $300. With that said, I have to give this a value score of a 1.2 out of 2. I do think that there is some very good quality whiskey within this bottle. I think it is a very good sipper. But the average dude, the average male, the average female, the average person, not spending $500 on a bottle of bourbon. So this one's probably leaning towards those people who have a little bit more money in their pocket. And if you have the $500, go ahead and spend it. But to me, a 1.2. So that brings this to a total lightning counter rating score of a respectable 8.2. And as you see there on the right side of your screen, that puts it in the great category. But when it comes to a $500 bourbon, I want this to be in the excellent category, especially if you're going to be shelling out $500. Overall, though, you see it still tops right now so far it would be in my top 10 bourbons and whiskeys of 2025, but it wouldn't have made the top 20 list of 2024 at that score. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that as we go towards the end of the year. So don't forget to hit that like button below and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out some future reviews and ultimately what my top 10 bourbons and whiskeys are here in 2025. Overall, I think this is a great bourbon. It's just the price tag to me is a little redonkulous at $500. Quick math on that, that's like $25 a year almost. Maybe a little more than $25 a year. 20 times 20, yeah. That's a little bit more than $25 a year. So if this was a 4-year-old bourbon, you're telling me that this would be $100? Hard to get me to pay that. I do got to give a big shout out to the folks over at Calumet for sending this bourbon my way. Very delicious. A big thank you to them. And I also have to thank my Patreon members and my YouTube member supporters right there scrolling on the right side of your screen. I've got a ton of amazing members that I call the Storm Chasers as we are chasing the storm of the bourbon and whiskey world. So if you want to join the crew and get first access to my barrel picks and behind the scenes content that are only posted to those members, check out the links in the description below as we've got a lot more cool stuff dropping here over the next few months. So if you did get some value or you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button below. And if you haven't subscribed so far, hopefully you do that as well. But the best way to support this channel is send this video over to your friend. Ask them what they thought, or maybe they've already bought the bottle and they've tried it. Maybe they line up with my thoughts, or maybe they think I'm a complete idiot. Either way, send this video to your bourbon loving friend and don't forget that it is always whiskey weather. Please remember to drink responsibly. And if you like this bourbon review, you're probably gonna like a few more of those other bourbon reviews up there on the top right of your screen. I'll see you in those next videos. Cheers, friends.